Have you ever wondered why American roads are so incredibly wide? For many visitors from Europe, Asia, or South America, it's one of the first things they notice after arriving in the United States. The streets seem enormous. Highways stretch across the landscape with 6, 8, or even 12 lanes. Intersections are so large that crossing them on foot can take several minutes. Parking lots often look bigger than entire shopping districts in some countries. At first glance, it might seem that Americans simply prefer to build everything on a larger scale. But the real reason is far more fascinating. The width of American roads is the result of more than 2 centuries of history, geography, engineering, economics, and government planning. Every unusually wide street tells a story about how the United States developed into one of the most car-dependent countries in the world. To understand why America's roads look the way they do today, we need to go back to a time before automobiles even existed. In the early 19th century, roads across the United States were surprisingly modest. Most were little more than dirt paths connecting farms, villages, and growing towns. Transportation depended almost entirely on horses, wagons, and walking. Since traffic moved slowly and the population was relatively small, there was no need to build large roads. A simple dirt road wide enough for 2 wagons to pass each other was considered more than sufficient. American cities were compact, and most people lived within walking distance of where they worked, shopped, and attended school. Everything began to change during the Industrial Revolution. As factories expanded and technology advanced, transportation also evolved. Railroads connected distant cities, industries grew rapidly, and the American economy entered a period of extraordinary expansion. But the biggest transformation came with the invention of the automobile. In 1908, the Ford Motor Company introduced the Model T. Although cars already existed, they had previously been luxury items affordable only to wealthy families. Henry Ford changed that by developing assembly line production, dramatically reducing manufacturing costs. Suddenly, millions of ordinary Americans could own a car for the first time. The automobile quickly became more than just transportation. It became a symbol of freedom. Within only a few decades, the number of vehicles on American roads exploded. Streets that had once been designed for horses suddenly struggled to accommodate thousands of automobiles every day. Congestion became common, accidents increased, and cities realized their existing infrastructure could no longer handle the growing traffic. Engineers faced a completely new challenge. How do you move millions of vehicles efficiently through rapidly expanding cities? Their solution seemed straightforward. Build wider roads. Adding more lanes allowed more vehicles to travel simultaneously. Wider intersections reduced bottlenecks and made turning easier. Additional space between vehicles also improved visibility and reduced certain types of collisions. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, city planners across the country began redesigning streets to serve automobiles rather than pedestrians. Then came one of the most important events in American urban history. After World War II, the United States experienced an enormous housing boom. Millions of returning soldiers started families, and demand for affordable homes skyrocketed. Instead of building densely populated city neighborhoods, developers created entirely new communities outside major cities. These became known as suburbs. Unlike the historic cities of Europe, American suburbs were designed from the very beginning around the automobile. Homes were built farther apart. Shopping centers replaced neighborhood markets. Schools, offices, restaurants, and entertainment were often several miles away. Walking was no longer practical for everyday life. Owning a car became almost essential. As suburban populations grew, so did daily commuting. Every morning, millions of people drove from suburban neighborhoods into city centers, and every evening they returned home. Roads that had once served relatively small populations suddenly carried enormous volumes of traffic twice every day. To keep vehicles moving, engineers continued expanding roads by adding more lanes and building larger intersections. However, suburban growth alone does not explain America's massive highways. Another major turning point came in 1956, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act. This legislation created the Interstate highway system, one of the largest infrastructure projects ever undertaken anywhere in the world. The plan called for more than 48,000 miles of high-speed highways connecting nearly every major American city. The purpose was not only economic but also strategic. During the Cold War, government officials believed the country needed a transportation network capable of moving military equipment, supplies, and personnel quickly across the nation in case of emergency. Wide highways made this possible. The interstate highway system transformed America forever. Long-distance travel became dramatically faster. Truck transportation expanded rapidly, allowing businesses to distribute goods across the country more efficiently than ever before. Families could travel hundreds of miles in a single day, encouraging tourism and further suburban expansion. The automobile became central to American life. Geography also played an important role. Compared with many European and Asian countries, the United States possessed enormous amounts of available land during the 20th century. As cities expanded westward, planners often had plenty of space to build broad avenues instead of narrow streets. There were relatively few ancient buildings or centuries-old neighborhoods limiting development. Rather than squeezing roads into existing urban layouts, planners could simply design wider roads from the beginning. This abundance of land encouraged city planners to think long-term. Instead of building roads only large enough for current traffic, engineers frequently design them with future population growth in mind. Many believe that building extra lanes in advance would prevent congestion decades later. Sometimes that strategy worked. Sometimes it didn't. For many years, transportation planners assumed that widening roads would permanently solve traffic problems. If congestion appeared, the solution seemed obvious. Add another lane. But researchers eventually discovered something unexpected. This phenomenon is now known as induced demand. When roads become wider, driving becomes easier and more convenient. As driving becomes easier, more people decide to drive instead of using alternative transportation. Some families move farther from city centers because commuting seems less difficult. Businesses relocate to suburban areas where land is cheaper. Before long, the additional road capacity fills with new traffic, and congestion returns. In many cities, expanding highways solve traffic only temporarily. Safety is another reason American roads became so wide. Larger vehicles such as pickup trucks, buses, delivery vans, and semi-trucks require more space than compact cars. Wider lanes reduce the likelihood of sideswipe accidents and provide room for emergency vehicles to reach crash scenes more quickly. However, safety experts have also discovered that wider roads can encourage drivers to travel faster. Wide lanes create a greater sense of comfort and security behind the wheel. As vehicle speeds increase, accidents become more severe. Wide roads also create challenges for pedestrians, who must cross longer distances while traffic moves at higher speeds. Today, transportation engineers recognize that there is no perfect road width. Roads that are too narrow create congestion and frustration. Roads that are too wide may increase speeding and make cities less friendly for pedestrians. Modern road design focuses on balancing these competing priorities rather than simply making roads as wide as possible. The contrast becomes especially clear when comparing the United States with Europe. Many European cities were built hundreds or even thousands of years before automobiles existed. Their streets were originally designed for horses, carts, and pedestrians. Historic buildings often lined both sides of narrow roads, leaving little room for expansion. Widening those streets would require demolishing valuable historical architecture, something that is rarely acceptable. Instead of relying primarily on cars, many European countries invested heavily in public transportation. Extensive subway systems, high-speed rail networks, trams, buses, and bicycle infrastructure give residents multiple ways to travel without driving. As a result, roads generally do not need to be as large. The United States followed a different path. Rather than designing cities around trains and public transportation, America largely built its modern infrastructure around the private automobile. This decision shaped everything from neighborhood layouts to shopping centers, office parks, schools, and even fast food restaurants with drive-through lanes. Today, however, some American cities are beginning to rethink that approach. Instead of endlessly widening roads, many urban planners are investing in better public transportation, protected bicycle lanes, smarter traffic management systems, and more walkable neighborhoods. Their goal is not necessarily to eliminate cars but to give people more transportation choices while reducing congestion and improving quality of life. So why are American roads so wide? The answer isn't simply because Americans like everything bigger. Wide roads are the product of abundant land, rapid industrial growth, affordable automobiles, suburban expansion, military planning, decades of engineering decisions, and a transportation system designed around the belief that almost every family would own a car. Every highway, boulevard, and massive intersection reflects the history of a nation that embraced the automobile more completely than almost any other country in the world. But as cities continue to grow and new transportation technologies emerge, America's roads may once again begin to change. The question is no longer how wide roads can become. The real question is whether building wider roads is still the best solution for the future.